Hi, I'm Rachel and welcome to Auxhart Gardening. Today is going to be the first in a series of videos that I'm going to call Harvest and Cook. And the idea behind this video series is to take you into the garden with me as I harvest something and then show you in the kitchen how I'm using it. And I hope this will be especially useful for those of you who, like me, like to grow things because they're cool and might forget to think ahead to how you're actually going to be using those things that you're growing. I ran into this last year because I just went in head first into growing herbs without really thinking about what I was going to do with all of my fresh herbs. I was just like, oh, I know the name of that, I know the name of that, I'm gonna grow it. And I got to the end of the year and I noticed that a couple of my herbs had died off and I had never even used them. And I don't want that to happen to you. So today, in the first video in this series, I'm going to talk about sage. Now, sage is a plant that I've mentioned before. It grows really, really well here in South Carolina, Zone 7B. I didn't realize how well it would grow, actually. It blew my mind. It grew all winter. It's a beautiful plant, and now that it's warming up, it's really exploded. And I've had to think about how I'm going to use this plant now that I have so much of it. So first, I'm going to take you into the garden with me. I'm going to show you the little trick to harvesting sage. It's not that hard, but there's a little trick you can do to make sure that it grows back even bushier than before. And once we do that, I'll take you in the kitchen and I'll show you a couple of ways that I'm using sage that are not just putting it in recipes. It's things just for sage. So I hope you enjoy. Let's go get some sage. Alright, so with sage, when you're harvesting, the thing you want to look for is where it's starting to make these new little leaves. And you'll want to harvest directly above that so that your plant can then put its energy into the new little side growth. And every time you do this, you'll effectively double the size of your plant. So I'm going to put you down. I'm going to cut a few leaves of sage and then we'll go back into the kitchen and I'll show you what I'm going to do with it. Alright, so here is the fresh sage that we just picked. Look at how pretty that is. And it's so fragrant too. So the first thing we're going to have to do actually is wait a couple of hours for these leaves to wilt. So for the first recipe I'm going to show you, we're going to wait for these leaves to wilt and then we're going to fry them in oil and basically make like a sage chip. If you've ever heard of kale chips, it's going to be really similar to that. And it's a good way to consume a lot of sage if you're looking to consume sage medicinally, because it's a whole lot easier to consume these sage chips than it is to consume sage if you're trying to just add it into whatever dish you're trying to cook. Now the second recipe I'm going to show you involves dried sage. This is some sage that I picked a few weeks ago. I just tied it together and hung it actually from the bottom of this cabinet back here. And I'm going to show you how to use this to make a tea. And I personally use this tea to help with my digestion. Throughout history, people have used sage to help with digesting fatty things, which is, I think, why they use it to season things like duck that are really, really fatty, because it's supposed to help with your digestion of things like that. And I do think it helps me personally, but it's also super tasty. So I'm going to show you how to make your own little tea bags full of dried sage. And how to prepare the tea so that it's absolutely delicious. Alrighty, so sage tea. The first thing I'm going to do is make my own little tea bag. You don't necessarily have to use this step, but I'm going to use it because I think it just makes things easier. Plus, they're really, really cute if you want to make them as gifts for birthdays, Christmas, whatever. So I'm going to show you how to make those, and it's also a lot easier to store them this way, in my opinion. That way you can just grab one, throw it in your tea, especially if you're trying to make them around mealtime. It just makes it that much faster. So right here I have coffee filters and just this, what is it called? Natural hemp twine. And I'm using twine instead of like a rubber band or something, so that I can just throw the whole tea bag into my compost. The thing I hate about normal tea bags is that little staple in them. I really hate it because you have to pry that out if you're going to go put it in your compost. So I'm just using these two materials that are entirely compostable. And really all you're going to do is take some of your dried sage leaves, remove the stem. That again is optional. I just think that it makes it a little easier to pull into the bag. So I think maybe just a little bit more in this one. All right. And so this is about how much I'm using. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, and to fold it up, I'm going to push my finger down so that I can kind of pull it up around the leaves. And then just pull the top like that. And then I'm going to get some scissors. And I'm going to cut myself a piece of this twine. And really just simply wrap it around the top. Tie it in a regular knot, like so. Just a regular knot. And then if you want it to be cute, you can tie the excess into a little bow, just like that. And that's just the tea bag for the sage tea. When I brew it, I'm going to show you, I'm going to add lemon juice and honey. And another idea for these, something I've thought of but never done, if you're going to make them for gifts, it would be to take one of the leaves, maybe even fresh if you're going to give it the same day, and just tie it in with the string and just make it a little extra cute. So the amount of sage I had there made 3 of these little tea bags. Definitely feel free to adjust the amount according to how strong or weak you want it. In terms of adjusting the strength of any tea, really, you want to adjust the amount of tea that you're using and not the amount of time that you're steeping it. So I'm going to pour the hot water on top of the tea bag. The thing I will say about coffee filter tea bags is that they do tend to hold air and float a bit. So if you see that your tea bag is floating, what I like to do is use a spoon and just kind of press it down and push the air out of it. And then once I've done that, I'll use the spoon to kind of hold it down. And I just leave it like this as it steeps. For this particular tea, I'm going to steep for 5 minutes. Alrighty, so the timer just went off. I am going to scoop my tea bag out and kind of squish the remaining liquid. This goes straight into my little compost collector. And let me bring you in and show you just the beautiful color of this tea. So the tea is this beautiful yellow-green color. And all I'm going to do is add some honey and some lemon juice to it. If you're the type of person who keeps fresh lemons around, a slice of fresh lemon would be really good in that. But because I am not that kind of person, I'm going with the juice that lasts in the fridge. Alright, here we go. Still a little hot, but that is good. That is so easy to drink. And if you don't already know this, adding lemon and honey to tea is basically the secret to making tea taste good. If you're not really a fan of, you know, that tea taste, the honey and lemon is how you make it drinkable. So that is sage tea. Alrighty, so my sage leaves are wilted and it's time to fry them. I've got my cast iron skillet on medium high and I'm gonna add in some coconut oil. What I want to do is make sure that I have enough in the pan that I'm going to be able to fry the leaves. So you don't want just like a thin coating, you want them to actually be almost submerged in the oil. You don't have to completely submerge them like if you were deep frying, because that would be a lot of oil. but you do want them to be able to have one side in full contact with the oil. Alrighty, so while we're waiting for that oil to heat up, I wanted to show you this leaf. So this is a little bit of a wilted leaf. With sage, it doesn't look as drastic as with other leaves when they wilt. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why you wilt the leaves first. That's just the way I was taught to do this. But this is approximately what the leaf is looking like before I put it in the oil. Alrighty, so it looks like we are warmed up and ready to start frying our leaves. So I'm just going to drop this right in. Watch out for that initial pop. You're going to want to do 20 to 30 seconds on the first side. And then flip it over. You'll know that it's about right when you start seeing the edges go a little golden. And then when it's done, you just shake the oil off, and I'm just putting them onto a plate with a little paper towel on it. Let me take you in for a close-up. Alright, so we're just going to do one so you can see. Now my oil is smoking, which means it's probably just a touch too hot. I'm gonna turn it down a bit. Alright, and you see how it's starting to go just a little golden right there? I'm gonna flip it. Yeah, you can see that right there. A little bit of golden. And at this point, it's not really sizzling at all, which is good. You gotta watch that first sizzle. And honestly, it doesn't need much more than that. Go ahead and take it out. Alrighty, so here are the finished sage leaves. You can see they're mostly dark green with a little bit of browning along the edges. I would show you more, but they're gonna slip off. And I've just put a little salt on them. I think they're good that way. I think these are a great little snack, but they're also like a really cool garnish to use on things that have sage in them. It just elevates it a little bit and makes you look like you're fancy or something. And they are so crunchy. Honestly, they're like just like chips. So that is my harvest and cook for sage. I hope you guys enjoyed. And let me know if you have any specific requests for the harvest and cook. If I'm growing the thing, then I will definitely do one for you. So leave your suggestions below. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Don't forget, you can also follow me on Instagram at Auxhart Gardening. And until next time, guys, I wish you happy gardening and also happy cooking.